Welcome everyone to Alula Education. Today it's all about alliteration, so shall we start? We start the lesson by giving our learning objectives always to students, and the learning objectives are the following. Students will be able to identify a figure of speech alliteration, develop understanding of all its features, explore alliteration in poetry, and write their own self-composed sentences. So these are the objectives that your students will be able to accomplish after watching today's lesson. Here is the outline that we're going to follow for today's lesson. Number one, we have a starter. It's called Have You Ever Heard? Then we have an introduction to alliteration. Then we're going to define alliteration. Then we're going to talk about the use of alliteration in general. And then we're going to be specific with the use of alliteration in poetry with a poem analysis of Betty Butter bought some butter. Of the following sentence: Sally sells seashells by the seashore. I repeat that again. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Take 1 minute, please, and tell me what's so distinctive, what's so different in this sentence. I'm pretty sure that most of you guessed it. Sally starts with an S, sells starts with an S, seashells starts with an S, and seashore starts with an S. So here I have the repetition of the sound S. Once in the word Sally, twice in the word sells. For the third time it was mentioned in seashells, and last but not least, it was seashore. Let's go through another example. Therese tripped and tumbled tremendously over the tree. I repeat that. Therese tripped and tumbled tremendously over the tree. Take a minute again, please, and try to tell me what's so distinctive about this sentence. Well, I'm pretty sure your answers are all correct. And here again, I have the repetition of the sound T. First in the name of the girl, Therese, then I have it in tripped, then I have it in tumbled, then I have it in tremendously, and last but not least, I have it in the last word of the sentence, which is tree. So I have it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times repetition of the sound T. Now, this time I want you to do it all by yourselves. And have you ever heard Peter picked a peck of pickled pepper? So Peter picked a peck of pickled pepper. Well done. Again, I have the repetition, but this time it's the sound P. I have it first in Peter, then I have it in picked, then I have it in peck, then I have it in pickled, and then I have it in pepper. So the sound P was repeated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in this sentence. So, guys, if I combine all of these sentences in one slide and I tell you, take a minute and tell me where do you find the repetition of these sounds? Well done. So it was mentioned at the beginning of some words of in these sentences. I have the first one, the sound S. I have the second one, the sound T. And the third one, I have the sound P. So, guys, we have our conclusion for today. The lesson is about the repetition of sounds, and this is the lesson called alliteration. So, our lesson for today, this is a new figurative language, and this is a figure of speech called alliteration. So, alliteration is the use of the same beginning sound in two or more words in a phrase or a sentence. So, alliteration is the use of the same beginning sound in two or more words in a phrase or sentence. Now, guys, in this definition, we need to understand that the repetition of sound is not at the end of the word, it's not in the middle of the word, but rather it's the beginning. So this is the beginning sound in a word. So why do we use alliteration? And where can we find alliteration? Now, guys, basically, alliteration is found all around us, but we never noticed this before. Let's start with characters. Characters are sometimes given names with alliteration in order to appeal to others. What's the meaning of the word appeal to others? So the word appeal means make it very distinctive, make it very memorable, make it very beautiful, make it very musical. All of these are mentioned in these examples. Number one, I have, who knows, what's the name of the first character starting from the left? Very good. So this is Mickey, the famous Mickey, Mickey Mouse. So Mickey, M, Mouse, M. So I have alliteration and the sound is M. Let's look at the second one. I have Captain Crunch. Let me repeat that for you. Captain Crunch. So again, I have alliteration with the sound K. Captain Crunch. Now, last but not least, the very famous SpongeBob SquarePants. So I have SpongeBob SquarePants. I have alliteration and the sound is excellent. It's the S. SpongeBob SquarePants. So this is S, S, and I have alliteration. Now, guys, other than characters, we have also some companies and they use alliteration to make brand names more memorable. And when I say more memorable, that means when first hearing this brand name or this name, it makes it really stuck in your head. So you can remember it since it has alliteration in it. Let's go through some examples that I got you. The first one is Krispy Kreme. So the first one from the left is Krispy Kreme. So I have alliteration and the repetition here is with the sound K. Crispy and K again in cream. Now the second example I have Best Buy. Best Buy. So again, I have in this brand name alliteration and the repeated sound is B. B in best and B in buy. Now I have the third one is PayPal. PayPal. So again, I have alliteration and I have it in the sound P. P in pay and P in pal. Now guys, as you can see, alliteration is found a lot in characters' names and it's found in brand names. And what is so important here that alliteration is used in poetry. So what we will focus on is alliteration in poetry and the importance of alliteration. Now guys, take 1 minute and tell me, why do you think that we use alliteration? So alliteration, it's used to create a more interesting description of different themes, people, and objects. It is fun to hear and enjoyable to use. Without knowing it, you probably use alliteration to call attention. So guys, as you can see, alliteration, it's very fun to hear, it's very enjoyable to use, and it's very memorable of all these names that were mentioned. So the minute that we include alliteration in our poem, the minute that it becomes more interesting, more enjoyable, and it calls for attention. Now, alliteration can also be found in some expressions and some familiar phrases, and I got two here for you. The first one is down in the dumps, and here I have alliteration repeated in the sound D, and I have turn the tables, and I have here alliteration with the sound T. One in turn, and the second one is in tables. So now we saw examples of alliteration in sentences. We saw examples of alliteration in phrases. We saw alliteration in characters' names. And we saw alliteration in brand name. Let's move to the most important section, which is alliteration in poems. Now, guys, I got a very nice poem here for you, and the title of the poem is found on the left with the small picture that I got you. The title is the following: Betty Butter bought some butter. So Betty Butter bought some butter. Before we actually go deeper into the poem, who can find the alliteration for me just from the title of this poem? Excellent. So I have here alliteration and I have the sound B in Betty, in butter, in but, and in butter. So I have four times just in the title. So let's go through the poem again. And I have Betty butter, but some butter. But she said the butter is bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter. But a bit of better butter will make my batter better. So this was the first stanza of the poem. I will repeat that again for you. Betty butter, but some butter. But she said the butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter. But a bit of better butter will make my batter better. So this was the first stanza of this poem. Let's go through the second stanza. So she bought a bit of butter, better than her bitter butter, and she put it in her batter, and the batter was not bitter. So let me read the second stanza again for you. So she bought a bit of butter, better than her bitter butter, and she put it in her batter, and the batter was not bitter. So this was the second stanza. Now, the third and last stanza. So it was better Betty butter, but a bit of better butter. So it was better Betty butter, but a bit of better butter. So this is the whole poem, three amazing stanzas full of alliteration. What I want from you guys now is to open your big copybook. I want you to make sure to add the title, which is alliteration, and I want you guys to make sure to add the title of the poem, which is Betty Butter, but some butter. After you finish, I want you guys to write the three stanzas on your big copybooks, and I want you to circle the alliteration found in this poem. So again, I will repeat on the big copybook. If you don't have the big copybook, use the small one. I want you to add the title. The lesson today is all about alliteration. Then I want the title of the poem, which is Betty Butter Bought Some Butter. Last but not least, I want you to make sure to write this poem, all three stanzas, on the copybook. After you finish, I want you to circle all, all, all the alliteration found in all three stanzas. Okay, so let's go through that again and please make sure that you're following with me. So let's go through the first verse of this poem. It's Betty butter, but some butter. So let's all circle the alliteration that we can find in verse 1. So I have B, I have another B here, I have another B, a lot of B's. Then I have butter. So I have Betty, butter, but, and I have butter. Let's continue. Then I have, but she said the butter's bitter. So I have again B and I have another B. Let's continue the second verse. But she said nothing. The third verse, the butter is bitter. I found it. Let's go through verse 4. If I put it in my batter, so I see, okay, nothing. Then I go, it will make my batter bitter. So again, I found two B's. Continuing, but a bit of better butter. So I have but and I have better. I have butter. So I have three B's here. And the last verse of the first stanza is will make my batter better. So I found two again here. Now guys, as you can see, the alliteration found here are all B's. I have one, two, three, four. In the first verse, I have here two, so six in total. Again, I have here two, so two. Then I have three here. And last verse, I have two. So the total in the first stanza is 12. See how awesome? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So let's go through stanza 2. And in the second stanza, this is stanza 2. So let's go through them again. I have, so she bought a bit of butter. So verse number 1, I have bit, so B. Then I have butter, again a B. Then I have better than her bitter butter. So I have bitter, butter, and do not miss the first one, better. Then I have in the third line, which is the verse, and she put it in her batter. And the last verse, and the batter was not bitter. So I have batter and I have bitter. So guys, stanza 2 has a lot of B's too. Let's move to stanza number 3. Okay, let's read the last two lines. So it was better Betty butter. So again, the B in better, the B in Betty, and the B in butter. And the last verse, bought a bit of better butter. So again, I have B in bought, I have B in bit, I have B in better, and I have B in butter. So guys, that was the analysis of the actual poem, and never forget that the title itself, it has alliteration, and I will circle that for you. I have it in Betty here. I have it in butter here. I have it in bought here. And I have it in butter here. So the title itself is full of alliteration, and the poem itself had a lot of alliteration, and the sound B was dominant. Now guys, after you read the poem, this poem with me, what do you feel? Is the poem musical or no? and it is full of musical effects with the dominant alliteration, this dominant figure of speech in the poem. So your copybooks are supposed to look like this with the circled letter D at the beginning of the words. So our resources for today's PowerPoint presentation is actually Twinkle, and you can find some of the materials there if you press on the following link. That is it for today's alliteration lesson by Alliteration. Stay safe everyone, and see you next time in another lesson.